All right, my dear colleagues, welcome. I want you to take off the white coat for a second and instead put on your detective's hat. Because today, we're not just looking at dementia as a disease. Oh no. We're treating it as a complex case that needs to be solved. A mystery where all the clues are hidden right there in someone's personality, their memory, and their behavior.
So you're presented with it, the most intricate, most baffling crime scene you could ever imagine. A human mind. I mean, where do you even begin? The clues seem to vanish into thin air, the timeline is all fuzzy, and here's the real kicker. Your victim is also your number one witness. That is the challenge, right? So where does our investigation begin?
Well, first, let's get a sense of the scale here. We are not talking about some rare, isolated incident. We're in the middle of a full-blown crime wave. We're looking at nearly 6 million cases right here in the US alone. And every single one is its own unique puzzle box that demands a really sharp, methodical approach from us. The stakes? They couldn't be higher.
Okay, first things first. Like any good detective story, our investigation starts with gathering the testimonies. This is step one, and you absolutely cannot skip it. It's all about taking a meticulous history, not just from the patient, but just as critically, from the family. They are your key witnesses.
So, what's our method of inquiry? First, you've got to nail down the timeline. Did this thing come on slowly, gradually, like a slow-acting poison? That points you towards a neurodegenerative culprit. Or was it sudden? Bam! Out of nowhere. That makes you think about things like a stroke. Second, you profile the symptoms. Is it memory? Is it language? Is it judgment? This is how we start to narrow down our list of suspects. And third, questioning the witnesses. Let's be honest, the family often sees the subtle changes the patient can't or won't admit to. That's the objective evidence we need to start building our case file.
All right, let's bring in our lineup of the usual suspects. Each one has a very distinct MO, a modus operandi. You've got Alzheimer's, the most common perp, who almost always leads with memory loss. Then you have frontotemporal dementia, which often shows up with these shocking changes in personality or behavior. And then there's dementia with Lewy bodies. This one has a very particular calling card, early visual hallucinations and a cognitive state that just seems to flicker on and off. Now here's a huge clinical pearl. For DLB, you have to ask about the timing. Did the cognitive issue start before or way after the Parkinson's-like motor symptoms? That one question can change the entire direction of your case.
Okay, we've got the testimonies. Now it's time to head to the scene of the crime itself. This is where we dust for fingerprints and look for physical clues. The neurological and cognitive exam, this is our chance to find that tangible evidence, the hard facts that will back up what the witnesses told us.
And you know, sometimes the clues just line up so perfectly. You uncover this classic triad: Parkinsonism, those really specific visual hallucinations, and a mind that seems to be sharp one minute and completely out of it the next. When you find those three things together, my friend, you have an incredibly strong case for dementia with Lewy bodies. It's like finding the culprit's signature right there at the scene.
But what if the crime scene looks totally different? What if the family is telling you about these profound, early changes in personality? And on your exam, you find this deep apathy, or the complete opposite, a shocking lack of a filter. Maybe you notice new problems with their language. Well, when you see that particular cluster of evidence, your top suspect has got to be frontotemporal dementia.
But you know, not all clues are sitting there in plain sight. Some are practically microscopic, invisible to the naked eye. And that's when we have to pull out our magnifying glass, the cognitive screening exam. A tool like the MoCA, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, lets us systematically poke around in all the different cognitive areas. And it is brilliant at uncovering those subtle problems with memory or executive function that we might have otherwise missed. No good detective ever skips this step.
So we've interviewed our witnesses, we swept the scene for clues, and now it's time to send our evidence off to the forensics lab. I'm talking about blood tests and neuroimaging. Their analysis can help us confirm who we think our main suspect is. But, and this is so important, it can also expose an imposter, a condition that's just pretending to be dementia.
And here it is, your standard issue forensics kit. Now let me be crystal clear about why we run these tests. It's not usually to diagnose Alzheimer's. Nope. The main reason is to hunt for those sneaky imposters, the conditions that look like dementia but are actually treatable. We're looking for things that could be clouding the picture. Could it be a thyroid problem, a vitamin B12 deficiency, an electrolyte mess? We have to rule these out first. It's just good detective work.
Okay, now look at this. This is what I'm talking about. Exhibit A. This is the photographic evidence, the smoking gun. On the right, that's the brain of a patient with Alzheimer's. Do you see it? The profound atrophy, especially in the temporal lobes, that shrunken, withered tissue. My friends, those are the footprints of the disease. It's a clear, powerful piece of forensic data that makes our case that much stronger. And this is why forensics are so critical. At first glance, you might just say, yep, dementia. But a sharp-eyed detective, and that's you, is going to spot something else. Look at those massively dilated ventricles. That is the classic calling card of a treatable imposter called normal pressure hydrocephalus, or NPH. This isn't just another sad story of neurodegeneration. This is a case we can actually solve and potentially reverse.
All right, the moment of truth has arrived. We've gathered the testimonies, we've inspected the physical evidence, we've gotten the report back from the forensics lab. You know what that means. It is time for the classic drawing room reveal. We're going to assemble all the clues and we are going to name the culprit. So what is the diagnosis, really? It's not just one piece of evidence. It's not one lab test. It's the artful synthesis of everything we found. It's taking the patient's story, the clues from your physical exam, and the hard data from the lab and the scanner, and weaving them all together. When you do that, you don't just have a theory. You've built an airtight case. But hold on, identifying the culprit is not where our work ends, not by a long shot. In fact, this is where the next and arguably most crucial phase begins. Now we have to manage the aftermath. That means securing the scene to keep the patient safe and, critically, supporting the survivors. And by that, I mean the caregivers who are right there in the thick of it.
Look, every good detective leaves behind a solid plan, and here's ours. Number one, above all else, is safety. This is where we have to have those tough but absolutely necessary conversations about things like driving or managing money. Next, we treat the associated symptoms, the agitation, the depression, the psychosis, because that stuff can be incredibly distressing for everyone. Then we support the caregivers. They are our partners in this long investigation, and we have to have their backs. And finally, yes, we consider our pharmacological tools, using them wisely when they're appropriate.
And hey, never forget that some of the most powerful tools in your detective's toolkit do not come in a bottle. This is all about simple, practical stuff. Creating predictable routines can bring a huge sense of security. Using things like lists and calendars can take a huge load off a struggling memory. Just making sure hearing aids and glasses are working, it's a game changer. Encouraging safe activities that are social and physical, all of these things have a massive impact on quality of life.
So in the end, you have to remember that a case like this is never truly closed. It's always evolving, which means your single greatest tool will always be keen observation, noticing those subtle shifts. And your greatest virtue will always be compassion for both the patient and their family. So now, go forth with confidence, my colleagues. The game is afoot.